We have essentially two places that we keep money. We keep money in the local bank. However, because the local bank is only insured up to $250,000 for FDIC, we do what most cities do, and we keep the majority of the city's money in the Public Treasurer's Investment Fund, what we usually just call the PTIF. The PTIF is ran by the state treasurer, and they aggressively invest and do things. They basically think of it as a gigantic mutual fund with most of the cities and school districts and counties' money in it. When you get to a certain size, then at some point it starts to make sense to diversify even from the PTIF. But as small as we are, we're not to the point where it makes sense to diversify, because we get really good diversification by being in the PTIF all by itself. One of the challenges that we have is we are restricted to where we can invest by the, you know what it is, Stacy? Pop quiz? I would ask Keith, but there's no chance Keith would know. It's called the Money Management Act. We can only put money in certain places by Utah law. Everything they do with PTIF is within the Money Management Act, and they're actually pretty aggressive to get us the best interest rate we can get. The best part of the PTIF is we can transfer money on a whim. The city treasurer can go in, we're gonna do a payroll, we're gonna do a large AP check run, and we can go in, transfer money. There's a lot of coordination between Heather and formerly Judy, and between Callie and Judy in money that we're spending to make sure that we're moving money down so that we don't keep too large of a balance in our local account. When we have a large deposit, then we move money up. So we just move money back and forth as needed to try to keep the amount that we have at the local bank to the smallest level. It was a surprise. I don't know if we realized that Judy was the only one on there. When she called in to say, hey, I need to go ahead and remove myself, I'm going to be no longer the treasurer as of this Friday, they said that's fine. But in order to put somebody on, you have to do it by resolution. And we didn't want to wait 2 full weeks, since we were probably going to need to move money. I'm guessing we just don't want to even risk it. Did I miss anything? Heather, Judy?
So what was the last resolution?
Judy, I'm sorry, you're not Judy? Stacy?
Dan, what was the last resolution? Did it just specify Judy alone?
The last resolution?
Mm-hmm. It would have to be done by resolution.
I don't know. To add somebody, you have to do it by resolution. So Judy has been the treasurer for so long. My guess is it was Judy and somebody else, and that other person left, and we never replaced that person. I don't know.
At your training, Stacy, did they say that you should have 2 people?
I don't recall that they did or not, but it's probably that I didn't have to.
Yeah. You usually only have one person that functionally does it, but it's a good idea to have a backup on a critical function like this. So our thinking is that we put Stacy, I do know her name, we would put Stacy as the assistant treasurer on there, and myself for the time being. After we hire a new treasurer, we can figure out what we want to do, who we want to have, and we'll need to do it. We're going to need to consider who we want to have on bank accounts, and we're going to have to do a new bond. We have to have a bond for the treasurer. So there's a little bit of tweaking we're going to need to do, and almost all those things require resolutions. So we'll be revisiting this again very soon, but this lets us, manage our accounts in the meantime. So that's kind of the.
Is there anything that specifies who it should be?
No, but your treasurer is the custodian of the funds.
Right, and you said you've had experience.
Well, I used to be the treasurer of Eden City,
Right.
so I used to move the funds around. And when I was at the county treasurer was the custodian of the funds, but I had to do all the accounting entries for everything that she did. So I'm familiar with the PTIF. That's why I said I would be an easy one to have as a second person. Long term, it's probably treasurer, assistant this is where the funds are physically kept, but our way of spending money, we can only spend money one of two ways. Three ways. One, through a check run that goes through its process with dual signatures and stuff like that with accounts payable. Two, our credit cards. People can spend money on a credit card, right? There's a process for that. And three, if you put it on account somewhere. So, the PTIF, all we can do with the PTIF is transfer money from our one checking account at State Bank up to there and back. We can't spend money out of the PTIF. We can't wire money. So it doesn't really, again, it's like having an account with a mutual fund where you transfer money there and then they do what they do and invest it. When you want your money back, you ask for it back. That's literally the role they play for us. So I call it the big bank account, but it doesn't actively act like a bank account. Now within the PTIF, we have a whole bunch of accounts, and they're on the resolution that the mayor has. I think they list all the accounts, right? On page 2.
Well, it only is a page one resolution.
Okay, so, there's a whole bunch of accounts within there where we have to segregate different money. Like, for example, we have to keep impact fees physically separate from other fees. That's a rule with impact fees. And we have like, gosh, it's like 20 different sub-accounts within the PTIF. And one of the things that Judy does is transfer those as, what we're doing, you know, when we collect, say, impact fees here in our local bank account, she has to segregate them and move them up there, right? So, well, oftentimes what we're doing in the banking world is supposed to mimic what we're doing on paper with our accounts. And so most of that is done in the PTIF.
What I just keep trying to figure out is, like, we can't even have a shade tree commission. I mean, patchwork byway, that's what I was thinking of, without two people on it. I can't figure out how we have this and didn't have two people on it.
I wonder if we did once and then, like he was kind of saying,
So when you are, there's a requirement for dual authorization to spend money. That's different than a requirement to have two people on there. If we were required to have two people, they would have already said you have to have two people. Now, is it good practice for us to have two people on that account just so we don't have a single point of failure? Like, yeah, it is a good idea, but we can't spend money out of this account anyways. Like, so no money is leaving the city other than with dual signature authentication. So that.
Where this is a custodial account, you're just transferring money back and forth. What about having the city manager and the mayor?
Well, I would say that it is the role of the city treasurer to do this. Because the city treasurer, that's their primary role, is the custodian of funds. Everything else is as assigned. And I would say this is clearly city treasurer role.
Oh, I understand that, but in the interim, until we solidify a city treasurer.
We can do whatever. I just think that a deputy treasurer that was just the thinking.
I don't have a problem with the deputy treasurer and the city manager.
Yeah, me neither.
But we could replace me with the mayor, or?
No, we don't wanna replace you, but I just wondered if it'd be good to have legislative and administrative, entity there.
Well, no, you didn't mention the legislative entity.
The mayor, she's partly legislative as well as administrative. So that was the thinking. So,
I mean, the reality of it is I'm not gonna be transferring any money other than just following our process.
sure. I don't think anybody is.
In fact, I would say that we just would have the deputy treasurer assume that role as the deputy until we have a treasurer appointed again. But
All right, if there's no additional conversation, I would entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2024-04, a resolution authorizing access to the PTIF accounts by specific individuals, the deputy treasurer and city manager.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call vote, starting with Councilmember Burton.
David Burton, aye.
Sharon Downey, aye.
David Harris, aye.
Rochelle Topham, aye.
Joe Dean, aye.
Thank you. All right, with that, we can adjourn with a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
John, I'm glad you didn't cancel your trip just for that.
Some of us are still good to make